Are you even on? Are you on?
Not yet. Well,
We can wait a second.
no, we're fine. I know what's in there. I've looked at all of it a lot, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're good.
Okay. Welcome to board meeting. The date is February 10th. And in attendance, we have board member Mary Shumway, board member Steve Black, board member Lori Munn, Superintendent Nelson, mkeyes, who serves several positions, human resource and interim BA. So welcome, and other business administrators. So we will excuse Lucille and Nelson at the moment. Hopefully they will be able to connect with us. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I did want to do one addition, or one note of the agenda if I could.
Sure.
I would ask that we postpone the San Juan High School presentation from Ryan Nielsen to next month.
Okay.
He is supporting the girls drill team on leave, and they didn't know if they would be still dancing today or not, but they've done very well, and they are still dancing and competing, and I did allow him to move that to next.
Okay. So we'll make note of that presentation is good. All right, so a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Superintendent, we'll do the Quest update.
Yes, thank you. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the CCR Day. And again, if we look at our Quest model, CCR is in this home language, in the home collaborative homeschool environment and working with parent engagement. And I was able to visit with principals and get some feedback back from their CCR Day. I saw some things this year that I've never seen in my career, just a lot of them. And of course, they are certainly being, they're certainly being generated by the pandemic. They're necessary because of the pandemic, but you might want to, I think somebody's trying.
Nelson, is that you or Lucille?
It's Lucille, Lori.
Okay, thank you. Nelson, are you on?
I'm on, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
We're just on the San Juan Quest update.
Okay.
The very beginning. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure the board is aware that I probably saw a stronger effort of outreach to work with parents than I've seen in 30 plus years of seeing our SEOP and now our CCR Day. I saw numerous examples of parent training videos that were recorded and could be watched again. I'm aware of tremendous efforts to set up both in-person and virtual meetings, and those happened throughout all schools. There was an opportunity in most schools for in-person if they preferred it, but there was also virtual meetings. In nearly all the schools, our app was promoted. They really worked on our new app for the district, and MES made it a real focus, but all districts really made it at least a part of what they did. And we did see our app downloads increase from 324 to 498 across the district. So that is becoming more of a tool and more effective as we can get information out almost at a quicker rate than ever before. So Monument Valley saw a total of 239 in just one video that they were showing. There were 239 people viewing that video. That's a pretty impressive number for it was a parent training video, and they had 239. San Juan High really looked at their option 3 students, and you'll look at some of that data today and realize they really wanted to target those students that were struggling, the D's, the F's, and some students that were struggling. And they were able to reach out and work directly with some option 3 students and try to provide support. Whitehorse is an example of where I talked about they had some virtual student courses where students could take part in these virtual courses, and they had parent courses, and those are recorded. If you missed it, they can still bring them back to those. Very impressive what was happening there. Montezuma Creek Elementary had the same thing going on there. Bluff Elementary gave us an example of one family that they've worked with and the success they'd had. But she also reported 98% of her students were contacted one way or the other on CCR Day, so that was fabulous. ARL worked, they talked about really reaching out in a way they've never done before digitally, in person, by phone, or Google Meet, and they felt like they reached probably more than they'd ever reached. And then BES talked about great collaboration with their parents and the things that they did. They also had some options to try to work with their parents. I was really impressed because I think the efforts to not only reach our parents, but provide some very specific support. Some of these videos talk about how to set up a learning environment, how to have high expectations for your child learning virtually. Just things that are really timely. And our teachers, we're drawing upon our expertise in the district. They're doing these videos. And I've sat and watched a few of these and I've been very impressed. So anyway, I just wanted the board to realize that I think that our schools have done their very best to make the CCR day meaningful and effective. You know, we are one of the few districts that have this type of a day anymore. This was something that was required by law years ago. We have not moved away from it. But I think we're one of few that have not moved away from it. I think when I last heard, and I can't verify that I'm totally accurate on this, but I remember hearing once there were us and one other district that still had these type of days. Having a CCR conference is required. Having it in a one schedule is an option. And I'm not aware that many districts still do that. So that might be a discussion down the road when we look at scheduling. That's something that can be talked about. But the fact we still have it, and the fact the schools really, in my opinion, put a lot of thought and effort to be effective was pretty impressive. And I just want the board to be aware. I feel it was a very meaningful day, even though it looked very different than anything we've seen in past years.
Great. Comments?
Yeah, are any of those available online to look at now?
Yeah, you're usually, most of them have a Facebook Live page, these schools do. And you just need access to that Facebook Live page, and I can probably get you access to that, and then they're on there long-term. Christy may even know more how that's set,
Yeah,
isn't
if you
it?
get on the school's Facebook page, you'll be able to
On the
see all of
Facebook.
them.
Yeah, they're on there. That's where I'm
But-
seeing them.
And then on the app, if you scroll through I'll tell you kind of what the schedule, most of them posted their schedule on the app and what they were doing that day, might give you an idea of where to look. So you're not going through a lot of business stuff.
Okay. Is there a reason why it's not on our regular, just like somebody can go onto the district website and access it? Is it more difficult to have things on there? I always
it
just
could
go
be
to
on the school
websites and see if I
website.
can find.
If you're going to the school websites, some of them are getting put on there.
Okay.
And look at the alerts. I think the problem is with Facebook Live, you're not pulling that video from Facebook to somewhere else. So those videos that have been created, although some of our schools are working at posting those on the website and a series, like the parent training videos in particular. Jacobson today was one of the things that they're working on is creating a button on the website so those videos are there
Oh,
for
okay.
parents to watch at any time. So it could be easy
Okay.
next year.
Okay. Thanks.
Great, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's go into the COVID-19 update.
Awesome. Just a few things that I think, we've had an opportunity every month to look at this, and I think it's been helpful. I probably, again, would like to just remind us where we've come from and where we're at presently. The board did provide direction early on in this COVID pandemic era and early on in the school year that the expectation for me and for our schools was to stay in compliance with the expectations and guidelines from the health department, the governor's task force, and our Navajo Nation tribal leaders and the health departments from the Navajo Nation. And we've really diligently tried to do that, and I think it's paid some tremendous benefits. And I think for the most part, we've really navigated things about as well as possibly could have been done. But with each month or each change or transition into a new sports season, or there's always, I think, some questions and some things we need to look at. We are right now pretty, we're at the point where we're transitioning into all of our championship tournaments for the winter sports, and drill team's going on right now as we speak, and wrestling's this weekend. I don't know, they break it up, and basketball's quickly approaching, and I'm missing other things, but there's a lot of things happening, and then we're going to transition very fast into spring. So my thought was maybe just I wanted to update you on where we're at now, and then talk a little bit about spring sports and activities, and go from there. I do want the board to realize that we're still testing our athletes. That's still a mandate. I would report to the board something that I thought was kind of impressive. If you remember our last board meeting, there was a parent comment made by a parent that stood before us and talked about how there was concern that the testing we was doing was not complying with the state health department's health order, because the health orders did state that we should be using a COVID-19 test that was approved by the FDA. And our antigen test that we have been given by the state and work directly with the state, if you open up the paperwork on that, the very beginning of the paperwork, it is very clear this is not approved by the FDA. It does go on to say it is authorized for emergency use under a CLIA waiver. But it was pointed out by a concerned parent that there's definitely discrepancy there between what the health order's saying and what we're in practice. You know, we felt like we're trying to do everything we can that we're asked by the state. But I actually had an opportunity to take that very question up to Richard Saunders, who is the state health department director. And that, he actually listened to my concern and said, that's gonna change immediately. And I didn't know what immediately meant. But I got on the website a day later and downloaded the health order, and it now reads, approved or authorized under emergency use by, a test must be used that is either approved or authorized by the FDA. So that was I can tell that was an I that they had left undotted, and he went back and made that correction. But I thought that was kind of interesting, that something that started right here in this meeting from a parent concerned comment led to that type of change. And of course, probably no one else in the state will ever even notice that, but that did happen. But we are still testing. We're seeing very low numbers. I want the board to know that even as recently as, was it this last Monday? Yeah, it was this last Monday we tested again in Blandina, Monticello, and saw very, very low numbers. I think there was one positive. One school had no student positives. And so, you know, those are the type of numbers we're seeing. We're not seeing a lot of quarantines in our schools right now. It's probably at the lowest point of the entire year since we started any type of testing. That's encouraging. Who knows what the future holds, but at least at the moment it's very encouraging. Now, there is a task force that works directly with the governor's committee, and I am aware that that task force, as recently as yesterday, was meeting, and spring sports and prom were some things that are now on the agenda they were on the agenda to be talked about. I know there's a lot of interest in our superintendent levels meetings around prom. School districts across the state are definitely getting a lot of interest. I think as board members, you've received some interest even locally about prom. And so I'm expecting that we will receive, again, guidance from this committee and from the governor's task force in these areas. And I don't have that guidance yet. It has not come out, but I would recommend to the board that we be a little bit patient and see what comes down to districts, because I know something is going to come down. There's a lot of, and I would say that we stay in compliance with what is expected from this task force. And I would assume, and that's a scary word to throw out, but I'm assuming, I think that the prom will be approved under some type of guidelines. But if it's not, we could certainly address that. But just be aware that that's being talked about at the state level, and I would probably recommend, before we spend a lot of time trying to decide how we might set that up and then get trumped by their expectations, we wait and see what their expectations are, and then we adjust, we go from there.
So, what would or could or authority does anybody outside of San Juan School District have to tell us that a prom can't be held? Or why can't we determine how we would hold proms here? I mean, it's not gonna be a law, it's not gonna be, what authority do they really have to tell us that we can't? And what about allowing people, now it wouldn't be mandatory, it's not like you graduate or you don't graduate, if you attend prom or you don't attend prom. What if we actually allow people to practice some freedom and host proms, and we can have have or have not some guidelines, and then if people want to participate, they have the privilege to participate. If they don't want to participate, they have the privilege of not participating. Why not do that and allow people their freedom for the parents and their kids to decide if it's something that they want to do, or if they decide we don't want to participate in that extracurricular activity. But why not? Why not? If people are going to prom, it doesn't really require a brand new dress and clothes and things, but that's generally what prom is about. And there's a lot of to do and a lot of fun involved with, and sometimes stress with family, with parents buying those kinds of things. So it can go either way, but if we're gonna have prom, people need to plan for it.
So when do you expect the guidelines? 'Cause if not, that puts us
I would
in
hope it would
March.
come fairly quickly because it is being discussed, but,
We don't need
you know,
it.
I mean, I don't see anyone that's opposed to prom, short of, in my opinion, the only way we have.
And they don't have to go.
But, I mean, what authority do they have? That's a good question that you could ask all the way through this. What authority do they have to only, they do claim in a pandemic they have authority to make these decisions. And it's granted to them constitutionally in a pandemic. So that's the only answer I can answer to that. What consequences would there be? Should any board in the state of Utah decide that they want to go a different direction? I can't answer that question. I'd have no idea if any.
Is it
consequences.
mandated right now that we can't hold a prom?
No.
Then let's plan to hold proms in the schools that would like to, and then allow
We would-
people who want to attend and allow those who don't want to attend.
We would treat it just like I would think we would treat it just like we've treated our test to play. Anytime there's been an ongoing activity, so like if there's a promenade practice, we've had those students be tested. So we probably would, could go under that same criteria.
So Matt, let's do it.
I would just point out, I would encourage the board to just think about consistency as far as deciding when to and when not to follow the guidance of the health department. If the health department, or health department or Navajo Nation or state of Utah, so far the approach the board has taken is to just follow that guidance and stay within it. So, if that's what you're talking about doing and going forward, following that guidance, that's great. If you decide not to follow that guidance, that's definitely within your purview. But I just caution to look at the consistency, something for consideration.
Steve, did you have a comment?
It seems to me like as much as possible, we as a board have tried to enable as many activities and learning as possible.
Definitely.
And we say that we can't do something, we have a restriction unless it's imposed on us from a higher level. And so with that in mind, I guess I would not be opposed to doing proms unless it was, restricted from up above. And then I hope they don't start
Well,
dictating.
I feel like that's the present direction I'm under right now, is I have no intention of eliminating prom or even requesting the board make a decision unless from up above it was some way came down that they were gonna be eliminated from up above, which I don't think's gonna happen, but I'm not an expert. I should just not speculate on something, but I really think we're gonna be allowed to have proms with some safeguards in place. And I believe we will be consistent if we do that, because that's what we've done under every scenario, is tried to be as open as we could under taking the criteria and applying it. And we've tried to keep kids participating and involved.
So a couple things is, a lot of times prom is after spring break, which brings some caution because kids have dispersed. So maybe if we push it out a little bit so that, even 2 weeks after spring break gives you a quarantine time for safety. I don't know, we've kinda gotta look at that date, and the other thing is the problem is if we rely upon the guidelines that are gonna come down, we don't even meet until March. So then we're hanging in the balance there with that.
We meet
but-
March 10th again is our next meeting, so.
Well, I'd like to see us go ahead and plan to hold prom, and if there's something that tells us we can't, but right now, we're not prohibited from letting our schools know that we can hold a prom. And one of the reasons why prom has been held when it has for quite a while is there wasn't a single free weekend from other extracurricular activities in the high schools where prom could be held. And so I know in lots of places, lots of schools across the state, it is held later in the spring. But for our schools, they just couldn't find a weekend unless they did it.
You know, and this also will carry over, I think there might be a little more time to talk about this, but this also carries over into graduation. That was another
Right.
thing that's already on the agenda they were talking about yesterday. Because many of the districts said they are intending and strongly want the state to allow them to have graduations, but they are finding that their venues are not open to them. The colleges are not opening up the venues. So they're gonna have to move outside. They said, we're prepared to move outside, we're prepared to go on our athletic fields, wherever we have to go. And within whatever guidelines the state gives us, we wanna try to have graduation. So be aware this just isn't prom, could also be the same discussion we're having about graduations. The districts were very unified in saying we wanna be able to do as much as we can. Please find ways to help us do this safely. But they're in favor of proms, they're in favor of graduations.
You know, there's more danger to the teenagers getting in cars to go to and from prom and the other activities surrounding prom and some of the other activities that they involve themselves with their extra, you know, the date before prom. That's more dangerous than them attending actual prom.
So I would assume we would just have restrictions in place, and that would be discussed with your,
Yeah. I think leaving this
Superintendents.
conversation, and I feel the board is unanimous,
yeah.
we have every intention at this point of having proms, having graduations. We will, I think we might ought to look at dates. Some of the criteria might say, we want proms to be outside. Well, that would probably change when we have our prom. April's probably a lot warmer than, some have had them in March in the past. Might be a little cool.
There's some cold days in April too.
And there's some cold days in April, so I
I've
don't
seen
know.
when spring break is really nice and then April and May is windy and cold.
So anyway, we'll just look at the criteria and make the best decisions we can.
I mean, one thing to think about, if the students wear masks all day and are around each other all day, I don't know why we couldn't practice that same practice at a prom and have it indoor,
Yeah, I agree.
but.
You might could have 15-minute breaks, you could do a few things
But
maybe.
right now, parents and students need to know if there's going to be prom or not. Now, we all experienced last March where what we thought we could plan on in life got changed like that. But nobody knew that almost a year later, all these restrictions would still be in place. And for some of us, for me personally, I think there's so many inconsistencies about COVID safety that, and people are getting tired of it, saying, let's be people. Because nobody knew, we as a school board, and myself personally, so we went along with these things at first. But had we known it's gonna be a year, and it's gonna be more than a year, I think we would have had a good discussion about what we really wanted to do if we would have seen all of this coming. But I think families are wanting to know right now if they can start planning prom, and part of, and maybe it's the female in me, but part of planning something like that and looking forward to it is that very thing, to have some time to look forward to it and plan. If you're gonna have prom and it's next week, that kind of takes away some of the, you're nodding, so you know what I'm saying. So I would like to go ahead and,
There's the asking, there's a lot of makeup to proms, a lot of pre events
Mhm.
that happen prior to prom, so yes, I understand.
yeah, so I think it's February, we need to.
I will try to
Say
find
yes
out
or
if
no.
any decisions have been made and how quickly we can get information, but,
And anything else on the COVID plan?
no, I don't think so.
There's two things from the River Region.
Yes.
So we should be updated on that. So, Department of Today Education did send out a resolution that we can have special education students return to the school. So we are doing that on a voluntary basis, and so our special ed departments are working on making those appointments, and so they will be receiving services back in the school that meet their IEP needs. And then the second is any school site that is an ACT approved testing site can also provide the ACT test as long as they work with ACT and follow their mitigation strategies. So that is a big change. We were really concerned about providing ACT. Again, it will be a voluntary basis where students will come to take the ACT. It won't be mandated and have to come into the building, but those are two significant changes for the river region.
Okay.
And one other to add on to there is yesterday in the update call with the Navajo Nation, President Nez for the first, well, I've noticed each week he's a little bit more open to this idea of students back in school. He did state yesterday in that call that will have a committee looking at the threshold to meet to bring students back to school. So that's the first time I've heard that type of a statement. Now, there were a couple districts that spoke up right after that and said they'd already made a decision that they're not bringing school students back in person for the remainder of the year. But he did not, he implied that there could be a threshold that we will bring students back. And again, under the present criteria that I'm working under the board, it's my understanding that my direction as the superintendent is, as soon as it's approved, we will try to move our students back in school, in person, once the Navajo Nation supports that. And so, same with what we've done with the state. Anything they've allowed, we've been as quick to try to keep our kids in school and participating within the criteria that's been issued. So just be aware that'll be my understanding unless the board gives me a different direction.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right. Okay, thanks. We are going to go down to number 8. We had a request to move that up.
I had a question.
Oh, sorry, Nelson, yes. Go ahead.
So on the river school,
Yes.
what is the long range outlook after the school year? Are we maybe thinking of doing summer school or anything that gives some of the students get caught up or do recoveries? What are we talking about? Anything yet?
Yes, we are. The second round of CARE funding, which is called ESSER 2 funds, have been made available to us. We will receive $2.8 million. The district will receive $2.8 million to target learning loss. We are having discussions right now, and we've strategically had some meetings to try to how to best target that learning loss. And there's a lot of variables that play out in that discussion. So we are talking about some form of summer after school intervention type learning. When we get into physical, in-person, using our employees, because of some of the restrictions in place as far as hours through the Affordable Care Act, our employees can only work so many hours per week, so sometimes our bus drivers have no additional hours, our cafeteria workers have no additional hours, even our certified staff, our classified staff have no additional hours. So we are, right now, a lot of our plans are centered around trying to make sure our landline system is up and going by summer, and utilizing maybe some type of a commercial learning loss company that might step in and help us, and we'll have better connectivity than we've ever had before. But that might solve some of our employment issues. So anyway, just be aware that talk is happening. We are going to have a plan to do our best to target learning loss. We have some funds that have been given to us, and I don't know if it's going to look like a traditional summer school. I don't want to send that message. The kids will roll in, they'll spend 4 or 5 hours at school, then they'll leave. And partially that's because our experience in the past has not shown we've been very frustrated when we tried that in the past with the effectiveness of that too. So we're bringing all that information together and trying to be as successful and as efficient as possible to target learning loss. But that's the long-range plan. I could bring a report as these plans finalize, Nelson. I could bring a report back to the board as exactly what that's gonna look like in all schools. Because we're building those plans right now.
Yeah, that would be great if you would, because I am in favor with Navajo Nation President Naz's idea with the threshold. Anything we could do to try to get our students, or some, or most, back in schools in person, to get them back on track and get them caught up. So that's why I'm asking. So,
Yep.
Okay.
so thank you.
Any more
Thank you.
comments? Lucille? You good? Okay. We're gonna move number 8 up, so Chris and Aaron.
I apologize for leapfrogging, but I've got to get
That's
back.
okay.
I
You're
got to
all
get
right.
back down south. Heading back down there. I just want to give you a quick update. We've had a great boon from the state to not only extend our timeline to get this project done, but to also extend our funds. We have, as you can tell, our parking lot has been inundated with large trucks that are getting our backbone in and running. We've got a lot of boots on the ground, and we're moving forward and to get this done in a very, hopefully, quick manner. We should have our first student lit up by the end of this week, which is, what's today, Wednesday? I don't even know what day it is anymore.
Wednesday.
Yeah, so we should have it
It's
lit up by the end of this
February.
week. Have that tested and hopefully have some sort of a hurrah moment with that. And Superintendent Nielsen is behind that and hopefully going to move forward. With that, is there any questions you guys have at all?
I would just add, once we know we have one of our lines lit up, we know it's actually coming on board. We do know it's still gonna be a number of days, weeks, and a little bit of time to move all the way across the Navajo Nation, across our district. But once we start it and we see that coming online, I do wanna do some type of acknowledgement and just a PR moment to recognize that what's happening and the efforts that have, this has been a statewide effort. The state has been very involved and concerned with this project. So you'll be invited, an opportunity to participate if you'd like. I'm sure we'll just do something. We won't go in a home or anything, that it's COVID and that won't be done, but we might actually go down and see firsthand a tower or what we're really talking about, and the remoteness and the ruggedness of what we're dealing with. And if you'd like to be a part of that, you'll certainly have an invitation.
I think I've addressed every single rock in this county by now.
So, do we have enough money then to finish this project?
Yes,
That
we
the
do.
state has, okay,
Yes.
great.
We think
That's
so.
awesome, and thank you for, I know where you spend all your days, and thank you for the work and everybody who's working with you to do that.
I'll let 'em know.
It's been amazing.
I want to
Really,
just
truly
clarify your
amazing.
comment though, Mary, because we do
Yeah.
think, we project we do. This is unlike any project we've done. This isn't, building a school even, you have so much more concrete information. This is a very interesting project. Nobody really knew what they were gonna dive into when they let out into this, so. We project we will, yes, but I'm
Well,
still
It's,
biting my tongue.
and we don't have time for this today, but I spent two to 3 hours on a Saturday with Wesley explaining to me a lot of how, what has happened and how it all works and done, and it's pretty incredible.
Well, if
So-
you have 10 more hours on that, we could explain the whole thing, so.
So,
Thank you.
thank you so
Okay,
much. It
thank
was
you.
really fascinating to have
Thanks,
him
Chris.
explain what he
Thank
did.
you.
Thanks,
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we do need to thank the superintendent and mkeyes for their efforts, and
And Aaron.
if you, and Aaron, if
Definitely.
you have some time, speak to them about getting that back on board and past that sunset date, because there were some great things that came into play, so.
I would love an update on that.
Okay,
and how
we're
that-
going to fee waivers.
Okay, fee waivers, again, this is just this 3-month window is open. If you'll notice, the very last attachment is a recommendation sheet. These, I would like to propose to the board, I take all of your recommendations, I put them on this sheet and make sure they're on. Include the 3-month window. We just look at the recommendation list and we can approve them all as one. We can approve them with the exception of 1 or 2 if we don't, or we can revise 1 or 2. but we approve all of those off of that sheet in whatever manner we want to proceed with. Because really, it's kind of hard to make a motion each one of your recommendations as we go along and then update it. And I think this is a public document, it stays public, the public can see what's being recommended. Any recommendations that come from the public would also be included on here. Now, Steve sent me a good list today, I'll add to this. This is what we came up from the first viewing. We realized that the credit card fee was still printed on there. We're gonna be removing that and those things. But that one actually can be done because it was already approved. That's just an oversight, so that one actually can be done.
Good.
But any others that are looking for change.
Good. Yeah.
So that was what I would recommend, and if you have any recommendations, just please get them to me. I'll add them to the list.
Okay. There's a couple that don't have a spend plan that I have a question on. That we might want to include that before next month.
They are,
I know either I missed it, does anybody see the Sterling Scholar spend plan for Monticello High School? Is it in there?
if they don't have one, they don't spend money next year.
So whoever.
Are they spending money this year?
Probably will, I mean, it's not
I'll
much,
have,
but.
Julie, are you still on the
did you hear
line?
that?
You might check on that.
Yes, I am.
So Sterling Scholar for Monticello High School does not have a spend plan.
Do they have one this year? I'll go and look.
Will you double check and see, Christy, on Monument Valley's JV football? And see if they have one? And student council for Monument Valley? And JV wrestling, Monument Valley?
Sometimes they only run the one team. They're not large enough.
Well, the only reason I asked is because they had them in there last year.
Or did they?
And so that's why I just wanna make sure that they're not being overlooked for their spend plan. And then last year they had a, Monument Valley had a junior high student council, I don't know if they have one this year, or well, for the next year, I mean.
So Monticello does not have a Sterling Scholar this year.
And you're not doing Sterling Scholar?
Well, they don't have a spend plan.
Yeah,
this year.
no,
Right.
I don't see
They must
one.
just not spend money in Sterling Scholar. I do
Well,
think they
They
get
did
a,
before, that's why they had a previous one.
you saw it, huh? Because it's
For
not on the
$50.
website as approved. I wonder if we pulled it.
It's a white horse Sterling Scholar, I don't think I saw on the list.
I will double check on that one.
So let's check on those.
Because it's not
And
on
then,
the, it's not on the website.
Julie, forensics class with San Juan High, either they pulled it and they don't have it coming up, or that it's not in the spend plans.
Okay.
And I think that was all, but I did not see, besides changes, I'll send it to the superintendent. Anybody else? Nelson, Lucille, did you have any comments on the spend plan?
Superintendent?
Yes.
Under junior high basketball, under miscellaneous fees, we need to include coach fees, and then add on another $10 on both junior high basketball.
For which fees?
Right.
Yeah, junior high basketball, girls and boys. Yeah, under miscellaneous fees.
And what will that be for when you say coach fees, what's it buying? We have to be very,
A coach, yeah,
a what?
a coach, it'll be or a referee.
I don't know.
Ref.
A referee fee?
Coach.
We don't.
Yeah, a
Wait.
referee.
District covers it.
We already pay all referee fees for the district. They're paid out of a separate fund. So no school pays for their officiating or their referee fees.
Okay. Well, let me check that. Let me
Okay.
check into that, and then I'll get back with you on that one.
Okay.
Anything else? Nelson, did you have any?
I will say this, and it's important, I think the board's aware of this. You know, coaches, if you ever wanna look at their salaries, they're online, and you can see that. They're, in my opinion, they're definitely not overpaid. They spend hours, and this isn't just coaches, this is advisors, this is in many directions, not just sports. But when they go on trips, there's no money for coaches. unless it's built somehow into the program. And I do think some might have built some in some ways, but really, that's one of the things that's been a question mark for parents in the last few years is my kid's fees paying for an adult to have a meal or paying for their motel room and anyway, just be aware that that's one of those areas that's a little bit tough because a coach can pretty much spend his entire salary buying meals if they travel a lot, and if they're divided, some of them aren't getting paid even in the beginning, but it's still problematic on how do you put it in a spend plan, or even if you should. Maybe there should be something separate for supporting coaches, or maybe not. But anyway, just be aware that is one of those areas that I do try to think about, is there a better solution for, because I know many of our coaches are spending the money, all the money they're making, and then in some cases they're not even being paid, they're just spending money to support our kids. But
So does that sustainability fee not support
Nope.
anything for
not really, that's,
expenses for the coaches?
I don't believe so.
Motel rooms, that doesn't come out of their pocket, I know it doesn't.
So it
A
doesn't.
meal might, but a lot of coaches meals.
They do, a lot of
That's
places
really
will,
common.
and if they go to a
But-
place that comps it, but
but
sometimes they
those-
don't. And sometimes they'll only comp 2. I remember those days, but,
But their motel rooms, they're not paying for those out of their pocket.
that's why I'm saying some are finding a ways to raise some fundraise money, and they're probably paying for some of it out of there. But I don't know, and I'm not as attached to it right now. Rich might know more, some of those that are right there on the ground level now, but I do know that how our coaches get by out there's kind
They
of
thought
they
that
might
came out
pay
of
for
budget.
meals, but they do.
motels,
I would like to
Budget,
find
yeah.
out any coach who tells me they pay for
a motel.
their
No,
motel rooms.
I don't think we do.
Okay, I'll look into that.
That has been a question though, how do you pull that out of the program? Because parents don't want to pay for rooms. They don't want to see that their money's being used for rooms, so where does it come from? So some of the fundraisers that we've had to do have gone in
And
as
if
ways to help
it's
pay
a
for that.
required team fundraiser, that cannot happen. Required team fundraisers, 100% goes to the students' fees, not the coaches. So the only way they can really do that is to have what we call that third category. We have individual, 100% goes to the individual, it's optional. Required team fundraisers, 100% goes divided up to the students. And the third one was kind of a program support fundraiser, could not be required. That's where some of them are doing some of the things and putting money in a little account, and then I think they're finding a way to pay for motels and even a few meals. But I don't know if it's systematic across the board. Just be aware that's a kind of a
So,
gray area.
because this changed the way it was done before, because in the past, I know,
Yeah,
but the fee, the sustainability fee, that doesn't go back to the student.
no.
So that's where that money should be coming from.
That buys their equipment, that resurfaces their helmets, that buys baseballs, that buys chalk for the field, that there's so many little the
Right.
volleyballs, the pump to blow up the balls, the new
Yeah.
nets that go on the rims. And the
Yeah,
uniforms.
and
Every
it's all expensive.
Every 4
yeah.
years, we're trying to buy new uniforms. That's what
Okay.
program sustainability is designed to pay for.
And hopefully those motel rooms, if they're, I mean, that would cover that is a fund that could cover the motel rooms.
If we get
there's
really,
enough money.
I would recommend if we get really specific about wanting to make sure that we've got money set aside for that, we put another line in here that would say something like coaches support or something, and it would have to be coming from that third fundraiser. Because parents aren't supposed to pay for that.
Why don't you find out where that's coming from?
Okay.
In my mind, it's program sustainability.
Hey, Bruce, I have a question.
It's just,
But the problem
One
is,
second, Lucille.
Okay.
then you get into, some programs have 12 coaches on the sideline. Do they have to charge parents for 12 coaches to go on these trips and 6 motel rooms so they can all share? Some have 3 coaches on. So do we have to then start saying, well, these are the parameters of what we will do in program sustainability? So keep in mind that it's got a lot of variables that turn on it too. Because there are a lot of coaches that just want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And does that factor in or not?
Lucille. Lucille, do you want to ask your question, please?
Francis?
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Do they get reimbursed junior high refs to the school?
The refs for like junior high?
Yes.
Yes, they are paid
Yeah.
out of, they are paid out of a district officiating fund that all schools have access to.
So, Chair,
Okay.
if I can, I have
I
a,
don't think our school gets reimbursed for that.
Yes, they have been being reimbursed. So you're talking if we had a basketball official or football official or volleyball, yes, they pay for it, then they submit a reimbursement to the business office and they get reimbursed. And I've seen that happening in all schools.
So is that true for junior high? I know that's true for high school.
I just
ahead.
Okay, so
received a
that might be
message
the,
from Mrs. Schaefer, principal at White Rose High School, stating that they're not getting reimbursed for junior high refs, and that is
Oh,
why I've
yes.
asked to have that added to their spend plan.
Oh.
so
They
we don't
should
do the
be.
junior high
So
refs.
that is something that we need to look into
Brand new to
and
me.
and
Did
address
not know
before
that.
before we come back next board meeting.
So that needs to be.
I apologize.
on those.
I'm not aware that junior high was not included. I thought it was always included.
Okay, so we'll get that.
Thank you,
added
Lucille,
on.
good catch.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
We'll look into that.
yes, Nelson?
Did you mention the junior high basketball for Montes Valley and football earlier?
Yes, I don't.
Not having a spend plan?
Did I give you that one, Christie?
Well, junior high or JV, which one are you?
It was JV, Nelson.
Yeah, junior high should be
And,
there.
and that's my point I was gonna get to. There is junior high, but no JV.
Right, right.
And sometimes in the,
On the girls,
if there was one
on the
last
boys
year,
and
that's
girls
why you're asking.
basketball, there's no JV.
So, and I don't show the JV wrestling, so will you double check those also?
So there shouldn't be a JV. So I think in the past they may have run a JV so that you could play more games, but this year I don't believe that they're doing anything. So
Okay,
that may
but
be-
if they think there is, we need a spend plan.
Right, and so how they've set up their schedule is not to play the
Okay.
next game. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
think that's
So,
an
okay.
adjustment they're making. I will double check to make sure, but.
Okay, good.
So, Nelson, Christie's gonna double check that and make sure that we have not excluded any of those things, and if so, we'll make
Okay.
sure spend plan is in there.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, anything else?
I think we got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
I have a quick clarifying question. Does it hurt to include last year's, if they had JV from any school and they're not having it this year, just to roll
We-
it
We did,
through to,
in your, if you looked at your other spend plan book, did you compare them? And then that's what we did, we took
You
one
mean-
from the other, but that's why we're wondering why those were missing.
Right.
You're
That's what
talking
I'm
about
saying.
formally approving it though, even though they don't have it, just formally approve it in case they.
just rolling those over and having those from year to year
Well,
in the
Well,
current one, or no?
no.
I
The
mean,
that's
only
just a
problem
question.
is, unless somebody's really putting their eyes on it at the school level, like a coach, you might be approving something that even if it happens, it's not accurate. They're gonna come to us and say, well, that's not what I wanted in there. If, the schools just have to decide what they're doing, and in my
Okay.
opinion, they've gotta
And so
just
we
give us accurate.
wouldn't have it
information.
this year, but possibly it would be back in.
Oh, yeah,
the
they
beginning.
could
Right.
come back.
But
Alright.
like, see, I mean, we found a lot of discrepancies in there, you'd think from year to year it wouldn't be that much, but there are.
Yeah,
There's things that have changed, so, okay, Julie,
Well, now, also be aware that things could change. It's not wrong to see change in those spend plans.
right.
If they thought they didn't bring enough in for program sustainability, they misestimated how much, or maybe this is the year they have to buy all of the balls that they're gonna use for the next 4 years, and maybe that increases. So be aware that spend plans very reasonably should change a little bit in things. If they're just copy and paste changing the year, I question whether they're really doing their work
okay,
and looking at it.
Julie,
Yes,
are you there? Okay,
Yes, I'm
you're
ready.
next, can you give us
Okay.
the data?
so if we just wanna pull that up and scroll down, it appears that the San Juan High top row, actually, those numbers must have, transferred from our option one overall numbers. The accurate number in San Juan High option one should be 35, So your numbers at the bottom, those totals are accurate, and I really appreciated the opportunity. Nelson suggested that we pull the river region data showing students in the river region that attend our mountain region schools. And so that's what these numbers are representing here today. And if we go down, scroll down to the totals, you can see that for option 1, our number of students in option 1 that are from the river region are 56, and option 3 are 97 attending ARL and San Juan High. And you can see that those numbers in option 1 for students who are on track and successful are about 68% of our students. And in our option 3, it flips to, around 12%. So if you scroll down to those pie charts, I think they're the most visible for us to look at quickly. But our students that are attending courses face-to-face in option 1 for quarter 2, we had about 68% of those students on track, which isn't where we would like to be, but it's much different than our 80% of our students in option 3 that were at risk. So those pie charts are really just opposite of each other when we look at our river region students attending mountain region schools, whether they're face-to-face or whether they're option 3. Did you have any thoughts around that or questions? If you'll scroll down, Matt, will you scroll down to the pie chart? Oh, there you go. It's just not showing on my screen.
Which page of pie charts?
So this should be this is data from last time, it looks like, that you're looking at. This should be the current one that superintendent sent this month. And it just has river region students attending mountain region schools.
I don't think we have that.
Maybe I don't know if that's not the correct attachment.
I don't think we have the right attachment.
Mountain Region Elementary Schools.
Yeah, so the one that I sent was just a 2-page.
Oh,
This isn't
no.
the right one.
We have a lot of pie charts.
Let me just be a little more clear then, since you don't have it visibly. So our number of students in option 1, district-wide, we have 56 students that are attending our mountain region schools. We have 97 students that are attending in option 3. For our students in option 1 that are attending school, we have 68% of those students that are on track. So we have 32% of our students in option 1 coming to school face-to-face from the river region that are not on track. So, and then our option 3 students, we have 12 students, so it's just really flipped. We have 12% of our students that are successful and on track, and we have 88% of our students that are either at risk or minimally engaged. So is that helpful?
Yes. Nelson, did you have questions for Julie on that?
No, not that I could see anything if the charts were here, actually.
Yeah, I will try to update that. I don't know how.
I'm gonna forward that email to you that has it attached.
Between Eva and me and Julie.
Okay.
Superintendent, I'd be happy to just email it directly to the board members if you want me to.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, I'll do that right
Include me, I
now.
can put it up on there.
Yeah, and I just think the important conclusion there really is that the data is very similar for our river region students that are attending mountain region schools. If they're in option 1 and they're coming face-to-face, the majority of them are successful or, on track. And for our students that are in option 3, again, the majority of those students are minimally engaged or at risk. So that really aligns with even our regular students that live in the, Blanding area attending mountain region schools.
Okay. All right, any comments on that? Okay.
Are all of the students who are attending school, so, is everybody getting themselves to school, or do we have a bus bringing them?
I think we should run buses.
Yeah, we're renting a bus from the bus that usually runs.
Still runs.
So how is attendance, or is that on what you're going to send to us? Are they actually in class attending, or are they missing a lot of
There's-
school?
You're talking, there's a group that's face-to-face that rides up, their
Uh-huh.
attendance is very traditional.
It's 60%.
And there's a group that's in option 3 who stays home and virtually.
Right,
And
but
for
the ones
them to be considered attendance, they have to log on, they have to respond to emails or respond to their teacher. They have to make progress within their learning expectations.
Well, my question is, do we have an issue, and I don't know, do we have an issue with kids riding buses and not coming to school? Is that ever a problem?
We have not seen that to be a problem.
Oh, good.
The bigger challenge is students just being actively engaged, those that have chosen to be in option 3.
Which is
And our ARL and San Juan High both spend a significant, and are continuing to spend a significant amount of their time working with, reaching out to these students and setting up learning plans, having conferences with parents, to help bring them back on board.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we can
There's
see
the
your
chart.
data now. Yeah, it's lit completely.
So option 1, you can see the green students that are doing academically well, that are in person, the vast majority. Down on option 3, the vast majority of our students that are at home are not doing well. You can look at the numbers up above if you want to see what numbers you're looking at. So those option 1 students at San Juan High, they have 35, ARL has 21. A total of 56 kids are riding the bus up. Option 3. In a different year, all of those students would be riding the bus up.
For Nielsen and Lucille, if they update, refresh their board docs, that's on there for them.
Nelson and Lucille, if you will refresh, you'll have that data on your board agenda.
I also emailed it to him.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So we need to get everybody back to school. Is this
Nelson, I think Nelson said that he's looking to get kids back in class, and academically, we do know they're better served in the classroom.
So real quick, Christy, those that, well, and Julie, I guess those that see that data, as a parent, do they have any more interest in putting their children in option 1 or no? Or do they know? I mean, obviously they
We
know
really
they're
are
not.
getting mixed feelings from families. We recognize the sensitivity of COVID and what that role has played with a lot of our families, and a lot of our families that are in option 3 that are living in the River Region, they just expressed to us that they're not ready. They've had, some of them multiple deaths in their family and really tough times of illness. And so we just are really trying to be sensitive and support them the best that we can. But on the other hand, we have had several students come back to option 1 this quarter with those conversations as well. So it's really, goes both ways. It really depends on the family and the situation.
Sure. Okay, thank you. All right.
Great.
Yes?
I think majority of the families at the beginning of the school year liked the option that they were on up to the point where they switched, and they like to go back to the previous option. However, at the beginning, when COVID was starting to progress more and more, the families were not that reluctant yet. But as time went on, more sickness and more death has come about from family members and so forth.
Sure.
So that is the catch there on that.
Right. Which
So,
I understand.
so everyone understands, but
Yeah.
I've been hearing from some families that they would like to go back to that previous option. But on the other hand, the others are still reluctant,
Right, right.
so.
And just so you're aware, we do have 18 students.
But I do
that
appreciate,
move to
I did
Whitehorse.
refresh it, I do see the charts now,
Okay,
so thank you for that.
okay, so 18 into Whitehorse?
18
or-
students have enrolled in Whitehorse.
Okay, good. Okay, we're gonna go to our, school reports, so, Mr. Palmer, you gotta come in front and center with Mike.
All right, where do you want me?
You can take a
Wherever you're
chair.
comfortable.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're welcome to take a seat or you're welcome to stand, so,
Just gotta talk loudly if you talk.
Okay,
yes.
I'll stand because I feel weird sitting and addressing the board. Go ahead and sit.
All right, so is there anything you'd like to speak to your presentation before we ask a few questions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, so am I good to jump in?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so the first thing that we have is some data for our school this year. I tried to break it down and really simplify what we have. Obviously, where we don't have the RISE results and different things like that at this point, I haven't included those from last year. But the important data that we do have up to this point, one of the kickers that we're really trying to emphasize going forward right now and going forward is our English language learners making adequate progress. In 2019, that was 26.7, and it increased from last year, from the 2020 school year. We really didn't budge there. We kind of stayed about the same. So we did put a lot of efforts into that. Our students right now, as we speak this week, are taking WIDA testing. We've done a lot of work. In the meantime, we've worked with a WIDA coordinator who's met with ELL students on a very regular basis to emphasize and make plans with them and make goals with them. And so we're hoping when we get this data back from the current test that we'll see an increase there. Current benchmark data though, and this is for students that are attending our school in person right now. We don't have that benchmark data for students who are attending option 3, but current students this year, and I think this is something for us as a school to celebrate. I've taken kind of the, we'll see in a minute, an average of some of our benchmark scores, but you see in our benchmark data, a pretty good increase from benchmark 1 that was taken at the end of first quarter, and benchmark 2 that was taken at the end of second quarter. Our third benchmark will be coming up here pretty quickly for third quarter. We see a pretty sharp increase in language arts. We'll look at the averages here in a little bit. Math, we also saw a pretty sharp increase in proficiency from 23.9% in sixth grade all the way to 49% in sixth grade. A great increase there. Overall, really happy with the work that we've seen and the progress that we've seen our students make in person this year. Option 1, also achievement numbers. We're talking students who are passing classes, attending classes in person. We saw a really good shift there as well with our students on target first quarter. It was a lot lower than we like to see, and that was 83% there, and we can speak to that in a minute. But second quarter, we saw a really sharp increase to where we had 92% of our students who were on track, 6% that were at risk, and only 2% that were minimally engaged for all of our students attending in person. And so a lot of good things have happened there. An area of concern that has been a concern that's already been addressed is our option 3 achievement. And so we'll address that. Our goals, and this is tied in directly with our 90-day plan, and it addresses each of those numbers that we just talked about. We really would like to see a rise in results for our math, ELA, and science scores on our RISE tests by at least 5% from our 2018-19 school year, because obviously we don't have that data from the previous school year. And an increase in our English language learners and special education population, a progress there of 5%. And so with what we've seen in our benchmarks so far, I think that we are in a really good trajectory to do that to this point. That's kind of been our primary goal. And these other goals that we have are goals that we are using to push towards that we feel like as a staff and as a school will help us to push towards our primary goal of increasing those proficiency rates. One of those is we identified as a staff, and this is something we've worked on for a little while, that writing is something that we needed to make some improvements on, particularly citing evidence, making claims. So one of our goals has been as a staff to make sure that we're supporting that in all areas and all grade levels. and also being more intentional in our teacher clarity and our teaching practices, and to put it simply, becoming better teachers, with teacher clarity being kind of a focus of that. So a couple things that we've done to help with that, and I wanted to include this. This is a screenshot that I just took of a rubric that all of our teachers across the board have implemented since January to help improve our writing. Where we're doing so much in Canvas to kind of continue to facilitate learning for our students who are potentially in quarantine and things like that. We've done a lot of work with that. So this is something that, like I said, every student is getting in every grade level and every content. Teachers have a little bit of leeway. Our content teachers in math and science particularly have added some clarifying points to this rubric as far as, when we're talking about math, citing relevant evidence to support your answer is going to look a little bit different than it does in language arts and in science. So they have made that adjustment for their specific contents, but what we're seeing is our teachers, since January particularly, have put that into their Canvas. Every student is doing that, and then we're meeting every other week as content teams. All of our math teachers, science, language arts, our singleton teachers are meeting together to analyze where students are. What are we seeing from our student results there? What weaknesses do we see? Where do we, as a staff, need to kind of maybe spend a little bit more time next time we give a writing assignment? So it could be something as short as a 1-paragraph response in an art class, or a 3-page essay in a language arts class. That rubric has kind of been the base of what we do, so that we're emphasizing that across the board. Do you mind going back up a little bit? Yeah, right there. So another thing that we've done in trying to implement teacher clarity, we have focused as a leadership team, and a lot of this comes from our A2A meetings as well. As a leadership team, we've identified areas that we felt like as a staff we could improve, and improve our teaching, improve our pedagogy, and be a little bit more clear and concise in what we're doing across the board. And rather than say, all right, let's have more teacher clarity, we tried to highlight one individual strategy. Our leadership team has been phenomenal in really kind of taking ownership and taking the lead here. So what you see here on the board is something that we've just recently done in the last couple weeks. Our leadership team identified a strategy in our A2A meetings to improve our teaching called wait time. Our leadership team took a look at data as far as how could wait time help improve our teaching, help our students process, and overall help our students understand what we're doing. We had one of our leadership team members give a great little professional development in one of our PLCs, and then we talked about it as a staff. We looked at some strategies to help us with this specific strategy of wait time, and then as a staff we had a peer observation day. And so what we did for that is we had 2 roaming subs come into the building, and they went in to cover classes for us. And each of our teachers had an opportunity to go to another teacher's classroom and fill out a little Google form. What strategies did you see specifically on this wait time? How long was the teacher waiting before asking for responses? Those types of things. They fill out the form, and this is some of the data that we got from those forms. So it gave us an opportunity as a whole to really focus on one thing that we felt like would improve our teaching, and as a result, improve what we're seeing in our progress. So we feel like doing those 2 things is really gonna help us to reach our goal of increased proficiency rates so far. All right, so I didn't see it. I probably misplaced it somewhere. I didn't see it, but overall, our progress, our increase in our benchmarks from quarter 1 to quarter 2. We're looking holistically for language arts. We went from 50% proficient to 69% proficient from first quarter to second quarter. The best part of that is if you look at our students who are below proficient, we went from, and I thought I had it included in there, so I apologize it's not there. I may have to send you those specific numbers. We went from around 14% below proficient on the first benchmark to 7% below proficient on the second benchmark, which is it's a phenomenal number, and we've seen some great progress there. Math, we saw some of those proficiency levels. We saw an increase in our proficiency levels in math of about a 10% increase there as well. I can't remember the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but overall a 10% increase, and a big decrease in our students who are below proficiency. So we believe the efforts that we're putting together right now are paying off, and we're seeing that, and we're hopeful when we get the WIDA testing, when we get the RISE testing at the end of this year, that will continue to hold true. Celebrations that we have as a staff, I just talked about our academic progress, our strong benchmark improvement, our low achievement numbers have gone down. And I think that's a direct result of another celebration, which has been a strong, supportive team, a phenomenal leadership team, and not just leadership team, but just a strong team in general. Our leadership team teachers are willing and able and constantly putting themselves in the forefront of this effort. So what we're seeing in our leadership team meetings, what we're seeing in our faculty meetings, our PLCs, is it's very rarely am I or Stephanie at the front of the room talking about goals that we have as a staff. And that's not happening very often. It's usually our teachers that are at the front of the room talking about the goals that we have as a staff. And that has created buy-in to the point where we're really starting to see things move in a very, very positive direction as a whole. Another celebration, and there's a lot here, but the student needs are really at the center of everything that our teachers are doing. You see that in every discussion that we have. This morning, our grade level teams were looking at intervention data, for example, to see, do we have students that we're pulling into our intervention classes over and over and over again, and we're not seeing progress, we're not seeing results. Let's identify those students. Stephanie kind of compiled a list, and let's identify those students. Let's make a plan for this individual student. What can we do? Who can we contact? What do we need to do differently? So they're really, really focused on our individual students. What do we need to do as a staff to help this student? And it's not something that happens in a lot of places. It's pretty phenomenal to see what's happened there. Also, I have to commend our teachers and our staff, particularly our counseling staff, with how responsive they've been. Social and emotional needs are really, really high right now for our students attending in person, for our students attending virtually. Social and emotional needs, students have been really, really affected by what's happened in a variety of ways, right? Whether it be loss of family members, that's happened in some, but in some cases it's just their lives are just way different than they have been. And there's a lot of coping that has to happen with that, particularly when you take into account we're serving 11 to 14 or 15-year-old kids, and there's already a lot of coping that has to happen there. And when you make things so much different, it really changes things for them. So the response from our teachers and our counseling staff, we've been really fortunate to have somebody from San Juan Counseling that comes to our school on a weekly basis to meet with students. We're meeting weekly to talk about the social and emotional needs of our students as well. And so that's an important part that I didn't want to overlook. Some of the challenges, these have been talked about. They're not new, they've been talked about, but nevertheless, they are still challenges. Learning loss is going to be a big challenge for us. It is a challenge for us this year. It's particularly going to be a challenge for us, you know, in the hopes if we are having more students attend school next year. You know, we don't know what that's going to look like at this point, but in the event that all of our students are back in school next year, who knows what happens there. Learning loss is going to be a big challenge, and finding ways to make sure that we're addressing learning loss for students who, for whatever reason, whatever roadblocks they had, weren't able to have access to education or didn't have the support and the systems in place to be successful. We're looking at all of the options, making some major changes to our master schedule to make sure we're supporting students with learning loss, so we don't want to create or further the learning gap, but we don't want to do that at the expense of students who have been on grade level and have continued to progress. And so we've got to make sure that there's a balance there where we're trying really hard to continue to push students that are on track and have been there and close the learning gap for students that have not had the same supports. Another challenge is support for our virtual learners. Julie mentioned that we have staff that are working regularly with these students that are working from home. We have dedicated staff that's pretty much what they're doing is making contact, doing everything they can. And we're not always getting responses from that. Stephanie and I have met with a pretty large number of parents over the last few weeks of our virtual learners. We've met with them in person. In some cases, I've gone to them. In the cases where that hasn't been an option, we've met with them over the phone, through a Google Meet, whatever option that we've had. I've made trips to White Mesa and to other areas to meet specifically with parents, to support, to create learning plans for these students, who have not been successful to this point. I'm really hoping that we'll see a turnaround in some of those, but it's been a huge effort, and I hope we have some response. And then the last one, for lack of a better word, is burnout. We have really tried, and you probably even noticed in the beginning, we've really tried as a staff not to focus on the restrictions, not to focus on the COVID, not to make that the focus of everything. Yes, we have to make sure we're taking measures, doing everything we can for student safety, but at the end of the day, our students are in school to learn. And our focus has been on what can we do. There's a lot outside of our control at this point, so we've really tried to focus on what is within our control. That being said, the staff members have been affected, but the primary concern has been how it's affected students. There has been a real effect that I anticipate there will be a ripple effect of this for years to come for many of the students. I've seen students who in 6th or in 7th grade were on track, in person, attending regularly, getting really good grades, A's and B's, to this year even getting to the point where they were dropped from enrollment because we couldn't locate them. We couldn't get them to answer phone calls, emails, certified letters, and they weren't active in any of their online learning, and we had no choice but per district protocol but to drop them from enrollment. And that's concerning, really concerning, that these are students highly at risk that we don't want to lose. And so that burnout, the students are, I have to commend the students that are, there's a lot of students doing everything they can, and I have to commend them for, they've been great at wearing masks and doing those things. They've gone above and beyond, but the effects are there, and they're real, and they're tired. All of us are, but the students, they're tired. And so I think that's a challenge that we face.
Okay. Does anyone have questions?
I just have a comment. Going back to the celebrations, I think you said it very well, and I'd like to celebrate for ARL, but I think it's actually a celebration across the district. When you look at that strong, supportive team with a clear focus, that's been a real focus of ours, and the leadership team and the collaborative culture in all of our schools. And I'm really excited that we're now seeing a time when leadership teams are just what we do, and it's being complemented from schools and faculties. And just 4 or 5 years ago, that was a brand new concept that we were just embarking on, and there was a lot of, a little bit of how's this going to look, how's this going to work. But we weren't brilliant. We were just following research. But following research, we realized we needed to improve these collaborative cultures, and that will help clear a very clarity to a focus. And you really said that well, and I think that's a real positive with ARL, and it actually permeates across the district. So thank you.
So one question real quick is, your COVID burnout, and we speak about that, and all the supports are in place for the students, but do you have supports for your teachers? That's a concern.
It is.
So, and helping them get through them. So do they have resources they can reach out to if they need that? Or, we've got counselors in the schools, but.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe it's supporting each other more than anything.
That's probably primarily where we see that, is in supporting each other.
Right.
We do, that counselor is there and things like that. I don't know that the same level of resources available.
Right.
For example, with funding that's been made available, if right now if we have a student that needs counseling from San Juan Counseling, I mentioned we have a counselor that comes in every week. There are funds that have been available. We are able to offer that to those students and to those families without cost to them. I don't know that we have, and that's not something I'm aware of, that if we have something like that for
I am
staff.
aware of a case or two where we have utilized our social workers in the schools to help with staff. We've had a couple issues with staff, so we've been able to utilize those resources. So we're trying to meet it on a case-by-case basis and see what resources we can pull together to best support our teachers.
And we've tried it within our building to do everything we can to build morale, help teachers know how much they are appreciated, what they, They go through a lot right now. Simple things is, we've got a popcorn machine in our building, and our librarian pops popcorn every Tuesday and Friday. I mean, it sounds like a silly thing, but simple things like that to kind of help just lighten
Right.
the load a little bit, because it's a real palpable feeling at times of, all of us feel it, but teachers are tired too. They're tired.
Well, thank you, we appreciate what you do.
I have a couple, you covered so much, thank you. There's a couple of things, let's see, that I really like this, and I'm just interested in a little bit more information. That it says meet every 2 weeks to discuss strengths and weaknesses of students' writing. Students graded the same in every content, every grade. So I love that idea that it's there, that cohesiveness and the, what's the word, the consistency.
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah, so
that.
what we've done there is, we obviously have PLCs every Tuesday morning. We've broken that into kind of two groups. We have content teams. All of our math teachers, language arts teachers, and so on will meet together on those mornings. The other Tuesday we have grade level teams, where our grade level teachers will meet together. So on those content team days, this has been a focus really for a while, but on those content team days, what we've done, like I said, particularly since January, is when a teacher is giving a writing assignment in their class, and we're asking them, even in like our singleton classes like art or band or whatever, in PE even, that they do at least one writing assignment for the week. If it's just kind of short and simple, they do one writing assignment for the week, and then they grade that assignment in Canvas. One of the awesome things with that tool is it gathers some of the data for us. So then they can look at the data from that assignment when they get together and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing here, this is what I'm seeing, what's our commonalities across the board, and what do we need to emphasize a little bit more. It's obviously a little bit more nailed down. Our singleton groups, they're there as a support to what our core teachers are doing. In language arts, they have very specific things that they're looking for. So our 6th, 7th, 8th grade language arts teachers are meeting to talk about, and they're looking at student samples of work in those meetings and saying, this is how I would grade this, how would you grade this? And our 6th, 7th, 8th grade science teachers and math teachers are kind of doing the same types of things. It's not perfect across the board, that's the direction we're going, but we're seeing, everybody does have these rubrics in place. We're seeing those meetings are happening, and we're talking about the strengths and weaknesses there. Those other grade level team meetings, that's when we're talking about specific student needs. Like, what are we seeing with this kid in intervention when, we're pulling them often, but they're not improving. What are we seeing with this kid? And so in those grade level teams, that's where we'll talk about those specific needs.
Okay, thanks. And then one other, talk about teacher clarity and improving teacher clarity. So just, I don't even know how to ask the question on, I guess, how you identify and how, if that's being improved upon, and how students notice that that's, how do you identify, or how do you gauge that?
So from our perspective, teacher clarity is something that we've worked on as a staff for a little while. In some of our A2A meetings, what we've done is they presented some strategies. And some of these meetings that we had in December, just as a specific example, they gave us a list of questioning strategies that can improve teacher clarity. As a leadership team, we looked through each of those strategies and highlighted what we felt like was an area that we needed to improve as a leadership team. And wait time in this case was one that we felt like we needed to improve on. As a team, that's the decision that we came to. And then we decided from there which of our teachers was best suited to give a professional development on that. They gave a professional development on a Tuesday morning. We talked about it as a staff, talked about some different strategies to improve wait time. And then that's where you see the peer observation data that came in. When we had our teachers go in, and we had every one of our teachers except for 2, because they were out of the building that day. We had every one of our teachers except for 2 that were observed at some point during the day in one of their classes, and other teachers gave feedback. So yeah, Stephanie and I do give the feedback when we go and do classroom visits on a regular basis, but it's powerful when it's coming from another teacher. Feedback, what strategy did I see? What was our average wait time? Research shows that 0.9 seconds is the average wait time, which is not enough time for a student to process a question if you're already asking for an answer 0.9 seconds later. So what's our average wait time? What do we see? And that's the data that you see is, okay, this, from that previous slide, This is what we saw as a whole. Our average wait time was this. These are the strategies that we saw when we met this morning. Not this morning, today's Wednesday, but yesterday morning when we met, one of our leadership team members presented that data. And so that's what helped us know as a staff, we've seen that where this is working, and where we see whether it's working for the students or not is in their assignments, in the results that we get from those assignments. So Mr. Bowers, in that Tuesday morning, he presented on some data that he had on one of his classes where he noticed in an assignment that he had given in the past, there was an average of about an 80% success rate on that. When he was really intentional with his wait time, he saw that climb to 90% success rate. So he presented that to the staff, and we kind of continue to talk about that. We have another leadership team meeting where we'll kind of evaluate where we are, and if we need to select another strategy, then we can from there.
Okay, I like that. So you just take one thing at a time and work on that school-wide.
Yeah.
And then that support
Try to keep
from,
it simple,
from
one thing at a
classroom
time.
to classroom or teacher. Okay. Thanks. That's interesting.
All right,
It's good
thank you.
stuff.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming in.
Research says that formative information that comes back from your peers is probably some of the highest feedback leading to positive change. I mean, somebody can come in and do an observation and give you summative feedback, but that formative feedback where you are listening to your peers and in a very, coachable, learnable environment where you're working together collaboratively is very powerful. So excited to see that. Seen it in a few other places across the district is really exciting.
Right. That's great.
Mr. Brewer.
A couple of interesting pieces here. The first one is just kind of how our department tries to support the Quest model and some of the things we do to try and help that. You know, it's always I'd like to listen to Principal Palmer talk about the grading in Canvas and how some of that can let those teachers, instead of sitting and grading papers, can actually be collaborating about what's going on and how we can do those things. So we really try to support the Quest model, and as we all know, technology touches everything, and this year has been extraordinarily different and challenging in a lot of ways. We've talked about that. You guys are aware of a lot of those things. I don't, you know, with our communication, a lot of the things that we're continuing to do, and when I say remote education, it's this system that we have set up right now. One of the things that I think is important to remember about some of the lessons we're learning this year is that these things can be leveraged as we move into the future, and that the systems that we're learning and the toes that we're stubbing are going to be a benefit to us in the future because we'll know some of those lessons. You know, we've had just a real great push on students and parents awareness of what's available, what kinds of connections they need. We've taken a lot of those things out. I will take calls during the day. Our help desk takes calls during the day from parents and from students who are troubleshooting issues with hotspots or Chromebooks or things like that. So we really try to communicate. There's some different ways we do that. The other piece has been this collaboration piece where we're trying to get students as much face-to-face time with teachers as we can. As I said, we've learned a lot of lessons about connectivity speed and what we need to be able to provide that, and what students need to be able to do that. We've got teachers all using some sort of a video software where they'll video themselves, they'll video their screen or even a piece of paper and record those. We talked about the parent meetings that are happening. And certainly we've seen, I think the last count I saw, we had about 1,000 videos in our Screencast-O-Matic, which represents 1,000 instructional videos. Most of them are small, short, because we've had to pare them down so that we can get those things delivered. Thank you. Caution. we really there are some things that we try to do for communication, and with the idea of safety. We're still doing school messenger, which is if you have a student that misses school, you'll get a phone call. Obviously, we're not doing that everywhere, but that's one of those things. One of the big things that we've done, the superintendent and I have worked a lot on, was the Thrill Share, the new website. And we've really been able to see how we can get information quickly to parents in a real digestible way. Some of these are not as big because, Navigate Prepared, those things will go, but we try to program. We program for a lot of these systems that we use, and of course we provide physical plant security, cameras, phones, radios, badges, and then our digital security, where we try to make sure students and their data is safe and protected. We try to cultivate these things as far as growing our online resources. Some of our curriculum-specific programs that we have for reading, those kinds of things. Professional development is almost all done exclusively now via video conference, and we try to keep those systems running. Some of our continuing to grow, or some of the things that we're looking forward to continuing with, the River Region Land Access Completion. We're really excited about the work that Christy and Julie have put in on the Canvas project along with David, building courses that are unique to us. It's really great. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to get a lesson from the Wasatch Front, but if you can get a lesson by a teacher who understands kind of what we're working with and some of the things we need to do, maximizing the effectiveness of this new technology and the new lessons we've learned through COVID. We want to make sure that those lessons are parlayed into something that's going to really give our, that we can just step off next. We continue to do a lot of data security and build better communication channels with parents, with the schools, with the district, and some of those things. That is kind of this one. The other one that I have is kind of an interesting one, and it goes through school usage of the different programs, so you can see, for instance, those are our 2020. So this is last year. Obviously, we were down. I mean, we crashed in March, but this shows you kind of how many logins we had, and this is district-wide. We can break this out by schools as well. But you can see which programs we're using. Canvas is by far our top one, and then Lexia, which is the reading program in the elementary schools. Obviously Aspire, which is our grade program. But you can see those. One of the things that's kind of interesting is I have the 20 and 2021 ones in there, and you can see how much more traffic we're getting into Canvas. We went up almost 200,000 logins in the same amount of time. So we're seeing in 2021 a lot more of those. There's also a graph that kind of illustrates that where we were in 2018 and where we've gotten to. We've tried to do some things to help with instructional effectiveness. We purchased some Canvas courses that are templates for our teachers to use. We have over 100 hours of technology integration training offered between May 2020 and January 2021. We integrated Mastery Connect into Canvas to help teachers more easily understand. And we have those templates, integration with ClassLink and OneRoster, which has been really nice. If you can imagine how frustrating it is to log into your computer and not remember your password for every site, ClassLink is one of those they can just get into and get right where they need to. In fact, we can pull a lot of this data right out of ClassLink. And increase the integration with Canvas to simplify work across there. So it's interesting because we will get here some mornings and the phones will be out, and we'll get here some mornings and Canvas will be down. It can be a whole different ball game. But that's kind of where we're at, and we're, like I said, one of the things we really want to do is capture these lessons we're learning for this at-home learning and maximize those things. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Why don't you speak a little bit on how your data backup and disaster recovery plan has changed over the last 3 months?
We had a disaster recovery. We lost 2 servers, and we were able to get those back. However, what we have done is we have split where we keep those servers and where we store our data. We have this we have a room in the basement here that lost a fan on a cooler, and it fried those servers. We were able to get IBM specialist in or Microsoft specialist in to get those up, but we're now routing them or saving them in different physical locations so that if we have a disaster at one, we still have those backups, because those are incredibly important. We try to monitor all of the traffic that's coming in and out as far as some of that goes, so that we can, for instance, with Kronos, we're watching those time clocks all the time to see, because that's usually the first thing that will go down. So we have a kind of a process where we watch that. Jonathan does that, and we try to address those things as quickly as we can. We have some, as I said, we've got some maintenance pieces in place now for physical plant type stuff. So that's been our biggest one, is we've tried to split those out where we're physically, so if we have a flood here, hopefully if we have a flood here, it's not in Monument Valley or vice versa. So.
All right, well, thanks. We look
Thanks.
forward to
Can
going
I
on our
just,
field trip.
before Aaron leaves, can I just
Sure.
pay tribute to the technology department? This pandemic has put some heavy loads on certain departments, really everybody, but equally to anybody is the technology department, what's been asked and what they've had to support with what's gone virtual in our district, and it's monumental. So I just pay tribute to you, Aaron, and your department for
Thank
what's
you.
happened. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay, graduation dates, 3 months.
Yes, just real quick, these are graduation dates about this time of year. We try to get those on your calendars, board members, so you can decide how you want to navigate that week. And you will notice that TES is opt out of the ceremony, but we'll celebrate with signs and things. So if you don't see them on there, that's why. But I just would like you to have those so that if you want to get those on your calendar early and start making plans, you can. And if we need to make any, again, we are planning on having graduation, so let's hope that it's all gonna happen.
All right, Superintendent and legislative updates.
Yes, so I'll maybe just lead out real quickly. Matt will definitely have more information. He's attending the DA meetings, and I think they get a little deeper into some of these things, but we just wanted, you may also be, there's a lot of virtual things happening, so I don't know if you're attending those virtually and aware. But I do have a document on here that just shows what the bills that the JLC has taken a position with and where they stand. Probably the issue that we have talked a lot about, Matt and I, and are following closely, is this West Ed study. There's a West Ed study, which is a huge educational organization, and they've come in on contract, on assignment by the state, I think the USBE, and they have looked over our financing of the state and how schools are funded in the state of Utah. And they have produced a document now that's getting a lot of attention that they believe would be an improvement for the state to move towards, and to better and more, with more equity fund schools throughout the state of Utah. They break it up into different categories. They look at, for instance, at risk, and then they look at NEST. They look at different categories, economy of scale categories, and the rate of paying for labor in some parts of the state. They try to look at all of those variables And, you know, as you get going through it, then you start seeing certain bills that might focus in on one aspect of it. And we're trying to follow it and see what it might mean, because we're looking at it through the eyes of San Juan School District, and it's kind of hard to follow all of it. And it's, in my mind, it's a little tricky when they start pulling it apart, because I was thinking, it seems to maybe make sense how it all works together, but that's not necessarily how it's all being looked at right now. Like, for instance, Senate Bill 142 is an at-risk bill that's gaining some traction. That's coming out of that West Ed study. And the initial looks at that really show that San Juan School District could take a financial hit in the area of at-risk, which I was surprised by, because anytime in my career I've seen at-risk students and funds that come through free and reduced lunch, we've been a winner. Well, the early estimates on that don't show us being a winner, so, and it's early, this isn't been decided yet, but I just want the board to be aware that that's probably one of the major things moving, and we're gonna continue to watch it. Matt probably knows, can add a lot more to it. And we'll just watch those bills as they come by. It also proposes some changes in the NEST funding, which is huge, and again, a big support to us financially. And every year, we go through this where they're kind of talking and looking at it and trying to figure out the winners and the losers, but Matt, jump in and
So
work
just
through
to,
this.
just to kind of elaborate a little bit on Senate Bill 142, it is, the West Ed study was commissioned by the legislature. They've gone through their first phase and they've come back with 5 areas or recommendations that they're recommending to the legislature. The first step of this is Senate Bill 142, and what that's really going to do is put the Public Education Appropriations Committee in the driving seat to re-examine school funding. It is about equitable distribution of tax dollars and things like that, which have been a significant topic throughout the state. I echo what Superintendent says. When looked at as a whole, well, I'm not one to mince words. I don't like the study. I don't think it addresses the specific unique qualities to the entire state. However, that's just phase 1. So the good news is it looks like it's going to go into phase 2. 142 has some support. It will likely get passed. We'll go into phase 2 and we'll see how this plays out. But I do think as school board members, you'll want to be just aware of this West Ed study and the impact that it's going to have on education appropriation going forward. It's really difficult, as Superintendent mentioned preliminarily. It looks like some of the weights on the at-risk funding would hurt us. I would hope that would change before it gets anywhere near going into effect. But
Let me add one thing there. I will say that I've asked Matt to do the same. I know he's doing the same. I have contacted our representatives, our senators. I've asked them to keep an eye on this as it goes into phase 2, because it does have potential to be a major swing one way or the other financially. I've gotten response back from all the 3 that I contacted. They did say they'd watch it, and I'm dialoguing with them. So anyway, I'll see where it goes, but we're trying to push the right buttons.
And the only other thing I had, that's the main bill that I think you guys need to be just aware of. But if you had questions about any bills, I don't know if you've had a chance to review this. If you have questions, I'll answer them now, or you're welcome. You know where I work.
Any questions? Nelson, Lucille, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I'm gonna need some time to look them over.
Okay.
If I do, I'll contact Matt.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's go to our spring sports schedules.
This again is a pretty standard thing to, it is required by the board to approve those 150-mile forms. Again, to look at their mileage and their travel to see if you feel there's anything excessive. And as far as miles traveled and time out of school, I've looked at these. I think they're pretty standard. I don't see anything that really jumps off. I would point out again to remember that the river region right now is not participating in extracurricular activities of any kind. And so this is just being approved in the event that we do get them back in school. We'd like to, if they do come back in person, we certainly would then feel like I would assume anyway that we would feel at that time that they also could jump back into the sports and the activities and the things, so if they were approved, that would be done, already done. So that's there for you today to
All
look
right,
at.
any questions regarding this? All right, number 7, Christy, would you like to take over the school and trust member mkeyes?
All right, so the first thing of note is why we have this much money. It's because we've received some additional funding that is going to cover our kindergarten aid that we're paying from this fund. So we're able to move her into that funding source. It's a 1-year funding source. So that opened up all of that salary for this year, as well as we did not rehire our PE para because the students aren't here. So that's why we have this amount of funding. We made a couple of changes. So one to the goal, we usually have the data for middle of the year because it just makes it easier for reporting for school and trust. And we did want to move that to end of year because we have very little DIBELS data that has been able to be done virtually. And then we adjusted some of the steps. You can see the ones crossed out will be replaced with the additional action steps to support reading on grade level. So that would be provide classroom sets of books so students can do some book clubs virtually. They will have more books at home to read, including PK and preschool and first grade books that are focused directly on foundational reading skills. So like ABC books would be an example of that. Also looking at preschool and kindergarten, they do not have the Chromebooks. So our parents, in a discussion with the parents and school community council, really looking at what is a device that could be used, possibly that runs on batteries. So if a family doesn't have electricity, we could replace the batteries for them, that would have these foundational skills built into the device. They'd get that extra practice, but not sending home another Chromebook because a preschool really can't get on a Chromebook by themselves and use the program. So the additional, that's also in the action plan to purchase those devices for preschool and first grade. And those would be devices that would be less expensive. So, you know, it'd be less expensive than a Chromebook. So considering that we probably won't bring those back, they'll probably stay with that family to be used for the length of their use. And then the other portion is really looking at our summer remediation or after school remediation, whatever becomes available, is using a portion of this funding, probably, I mean, if you see it, the majority of the funding would really go towards what we would be able to do to help students once we get them back, or to do it virtually. And that could be, we're looking at virtual consultants. I know superintendent referred to all of these already, but this would be an additional supplement that we could use for virtual tutoring or for teachers. Teachers, you know, get that same thing in mind, that summertime is their time to, you know, disengage and to reset for the new year. So that's what that funding would be for. So you can see that the funding changes. It could either go towards teacher salaries for that virtual tutoring, or it could go to a consulting company with that virtual tutoring. Okay. Any questions?
Any questions? Nelson, Lucille, do you have any questions? I don't think so.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I guess we do. Go ahead.
If someone could go over the budget page there real quickly.
Yes.
Give a little bit of a clarification on it.
Sure. So if you looked at, and I'm not sure what your clarification is, but I can point out a couple of things that probably seem a little different. So you can see our grant revenue allocation for this year, and then we had some carryover from last year, which was in our normal range. And then, so that gave us the revenue available. The virtual tutoring, that could be with a possible contract service or with teachers, so that covers the benefit on that tutoring. And then on the para, we have our STEAM para and our PE para, and then a portion of our computer specialist para. So we still have the computer specialist para, and we still have our STEAM para that's working because they've been able to continue in their role even with distance learning. So when you look at that para, 100%, 6.59 thousand, half of that is not being used for the PE para. And then if you look at the unemployment line underneath the benefits, that was based upon COVID, and that's kind of explained at the bottom. But because of the school closures last year, someone was able to apply for unemployment, and we had to pay that out. So that's kind of where that's at. And then if you look at the supplies, that would be those devices for preschool and kindergarten. That would also be the books, and then any additional intervention supplies as part of our virtual tutoring.
Okay, so the carryover is the 1684 amount.
If you go back.
Yes.
Yes,
Is that right?
that is correct.
Okay. Okay, all right, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Mr. Cook.
All right. Guess you're ready for me? All right. So before I start to talk a little bit about this, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the world of employment, post-secondary education, and those kind of things is changing dramatically. In many cases, it's no longer just the traditional associate's degree, bachelor's, master's, doctorate. There's actually certificate programs and stackable credentials that lead into further educational things, and that's becoming very much part of the college here. And I just want you to remember that. And this isn't related to the college here, but we are working on it. But if we put our kids, our students, through a 360-hour Code to Success program, and they complete it by their senior year, they're virtually guaranteed employment for $30 an hour, if not more, immediately with coding. And if you compare that to an educator, our teacher salaries start at $29.35 an hour. And so with no education, some of these CTE-related programs can actually get certificates and credentials that are recognized by industry that will help our kids get employment, which is a good way to put themselves through school. And I can name several examples to include my daughter, who was able to put herself through a bachelor's degree because she went through each of those levels and was able to get jobs. And so she basically came out of a bachelor's degree with no debt. So it's just the things that are changing. So as we look at trying to enhance CTE, we're doing a number of things that are really revolutionary and exciting, and I hope I can share them with you shortly because I think you'll really be impressed. But what we want to do is really look at how we can enhance CTE in Monticello. And as you know, there's some land north of the high school that was originally a residence, and there's a metal building, a garage out back that's really in fine shape. It has a few minor problems, and then some land there that's just not being used. And as we discussed how we can potentially improve CTE and provide more offerings, it would be really good to use that land. For example, in San Juan High School, we have a place to weigh livestock, care for livestock. We have a little garden area, and we have a brand new greenhouse. And if you look right there in your things, I put in a copy of the greenhouse that, whoops, we'll go to the other one, that we just built, okay? So there's the greenhouses. Now there was a greenhouse out there, but it was poorly built. It wasn't on a good foundation. It was falling apart. This is a greenhouse with minimal care. It will last for many years. And so, but I really want to go back to what I want you to think about with this proposal. It's not about a greenhouse necessarily, but it's about a construction program. And I've already been in talks with the director of CTE over here at the college, and they're looking at creating some concurrent enrollment classes that we could do up there with Nathan and potentially lead to some certificates. Sorry, it's hard to breathe through this mask. I need to pull it down, but I won't. So anyway.
6 feet away.
Pardon?
You're 6 feet
All
away.
right, I'll pull it down so now I can talk better. That makes it better. So anyway, I'm working with them, and they've got a really nice construction program here in Blanding. If many of you know, they build houses and sell them, and they could actually include that with some of the things that we're doing. Well, you know, the shop in Monticello is a little crowded. That shed can be used for some really neat things to expand it and get some of their tools and storage out there, and also to allow them to do a little bit of construction projects that could enhance or prepare them for going to the college here for a certificate, or potentially gain a certificate if we can get all that worked out. And so using the shed would be a fantastic thing for that. They could do things like even build tough sheds and help them get more construction knowledge than they can do right now. And so as we've discussed this, you know, some exciting ideas came from the teachers and the principals, and if you'll look in there, you'll see a proposal that they put together. And then I've got some pictures of the land, and basically in that proposal, they want to use the shed for a construction area. It's just sitting there. It's in great shape. And the only thing it needs is electricity, and to fix the front door, there's a metal cement slab that's causing the door to stick out a little bit.
but with a little bit of work, it can be used for that. Then there's some land out there that could be eventually, not immediately, put on a small greenhouse, and then have a small garden spot, and then maybe a temporary holding area for animals, a little bit similar to what we have here. In Monticello, we want to be a little bit more careful, and they already know that. We don't want to create a permanent place because it's within the city, and we create probably some neighbors that wouldn't be too happy. But I'm really proud of our teachers out there trying to come up with some proposals to expand their programs and working with the college. So what you see is their proposal. You can see some land in the building there. Now, I just will highlight to answer Mary's question about costs for the greenhouse specifically. I'll pull it up in just a second, or Matt, if you want to pull it up, you can just put it on the board. It's the proposal there. Now, this is just a comparison, but when we built the San Juan greenhouse, we had grants and CT monies that paid for about 50,000 of it. The real problem with that was where it was located was getting utilities connected, and we couldn't pay for that. And because they had to trench clear across that parking lot and into ZLV, and actually to get gas and electricity, it became a little more costly than anticipated. But Kyle had some funds that he had available, and so we were able to work it out. And so the cost was a little bit higher. In Monticello, the utilities are already there. They're basically hooked up. If you look in one of the pictures, you can see the water line right there. It just needs to be re-hooked up to a greenhouse or a garden spot. Electricity is there. According to Kyle and Tom, when we were talking, it's virtually there. So the cost is going to be a lot less because there's not any heavy-duty work. I put an estimate of 8,000 because we just don't know as there, but I'll go through the cost. If we were to get it ultimately, and I don't see this happening for in the immediate future, but if we were to get a greenhouse there, a kit would cost, a good kit, a quality kit would cost about 28,000. To build it would be about, or get it set up, probably another 14,000, and then we'd have to connect the utilities. We can do everything inside of it with CT funds. We just can't bring the supplanting, bring what the school district would normally have to pay for, and then annual maintenance and supplies could come out of CT funds. You can scroll down a little bit more, Matt. So there's a lot of challenges with determining the cost of what it is in utilities, but I pulled this off littlegreenhouse.com, and I also talked to a couple of people who ran greenhouses, and I also talked with Tom, and actually it's all fairly similar. Now, Monticello, if we got them a smaller greenhouse, San Juan, if you look at the bottom, is a 20 by 30. And we actually were going to start with a 15 by 20, but we had more money and we went a little bigger because they have more kids in their classes and more potential, at least they did. They've gone down a little bit because of the pandemic. But if you look at 600 square feet, in averaging the monthly utility, it would be about 220, and that's during the high month, and gas would be 53 for a total cost of 274. When I was talking to Tom, he felt it'd be about $300 in addition monthly cost to the utilities at San Juan High School. I can tell you that these greenhouses probably will not be running year round. Part of the winter they'll probably not have, depending on the courses that they run. So there may not be anything in there during the fall and during the winter, but then they would start in the spring. So the cost is relative. If you look at Monticello and what it would cost, if we got them a 15 by 20 with 300 square feet, which is half the size, you can see what the cost would be. Now, it's not because it's half the size, it doesn't relate to San Juan's because the temperature factors are different, the altitude and temperature. So you can't say, well, that's not exactly half of what San Juan's is. You have to take in temperatures and size and all and cost. So, you can see if we got a 15-1, there'd be $160 potential cost per month at Monticello for a smaller one. If we got the big one that they wanted, which is bigger than San Juan's, 24 by 36, which I really want to get a greenhouse, but I'm not sure that big would be cost effective for what we need. But you can see the cost there. So anyway, I really think this is a good way to enhance Monticello. We want to increase enrollment, but if we can provide classes that will lead to certificates and classes of interest, I really believe that we can increase the enrollment in Monticello. It'll also change a little bit of the perspective of Monticello. For many years, Monticello, and it started back, I think, when a lot of kids were graduating mid-year with an associate's degree, but it was kind of like, hey, you know, when I get my 26 credits, I don't need to come to school anymore, and a lot of that was allowed, or they just put them into a work-study program, a work release, and none of that's bad. But when talking with kids about some of these programs, I had a group of kids say, wow, I think I'm going to graduate early so I can go down to Blanding and start my program. And I said, what if we offer that program for you to stay here in Monticello? And I've already talked to the college. They actually came up and talked with the kids, and they said, wow, I never knew that was an option. So, you know, it's really how we sell it, how we look at it, and what we do to recruit it. Of course, there's responsibilities on the school and on the teachers to recruit and provide instruction that will be relevant and bring in students who are interested. But I really appreciate Monticello High School's efforts in trying to expand and look at how they can improve their programs, and so that's basically it. I hope I answered your question.
So, tell me the number that are enrolled in, like, with the San Juan with the greenhouse that use that, and then tell me Monticello's.
I'd have to get you that information.
Cause like, the thing is
Well,
that
maybe I can give it to you.
we have a class that would support that greenhouse, and my second question is, did we figure out the cost to fix that metal building across, that's on the other side, that seminary building?
That metal building has a pad that needs to be re-poured and the door fixed. None of that's connecting.
So I mean, I can see that very viable. My question is on the greenhouse.
We have talked about monitoring the numbers and that there would have to be some type of a threshold of when the numbers justify putting the greenhouse in.
Well, absolutely.
So do they right now?
I don't know that they have the numbers right now to justify it. But we're also we want to create opportunities that will bring in more interest as well. Let me see if I can get you some numbers here real quick.
So the greenhouse, let's see, what is the certificate that is associated specifically with taking the class? What is the class?
What's the pathway? What is it?
Well, I mean, there's a number of pathways, and in a different
That are
presentation I
involved
could
with the
show you.
greenhouse?
I mean, you have horticulture, you have a number of things, floriculture, you have a few, and I could get you some of that information later. Let me just see if I can give you some numbers here real quick.
Be aware, board, that there, and it ties together, but I do not think it competes from everything I gather. You do have an organization that's working with the city, we mentioned this last month, that is trying to work out some type of a strategic plan that would keep the pool open either all year or at least more than what it presently is. That plan involves some type of a solar panel being installed that would provide power to the pool. The most ideal piece of property next to that pool, ideal for putting in a solar panel, is actually a little further west from where Mr. Mance is proposing. And I don't think the two compete. There's enough room for both of those because there is quite a bit of land that stretches out back there towards the pool. But I did receive word from that organization that they would like to come in March and present. So just want you to be aware that that is on the agenda as well. And at this point, I don't suspect that they compete with one another.
So
Just real quickly, Marcelo.
I have a question.
go ahead.
On the bottom on that note, says calculations come from littlegreenhouse.com. Now, is that a calculation for the utilities, the electric rate, and the gas rate as well?
No.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, that's where you go and put in the data.
Are these actual numbers reflecting
Yeah, monthly gas.
the blending utility versus?
No, what you do is go to littlegreenhouse.com, you put in the size of the facility, you know, the average cold temperature, the average overall temperature, you put in the price of electricity and gas, and then you hit
Climate.
calculate, and then it comes out with a kind of an estimated cost.
Yes,
So
that,
you enter the local gas and electric company rate.
No, these figures did not come from the local gas company or electric company. They came from the littlegreenhouse.com where you plug the numbers in.
I'm sorry, you were out choppy.
Oh,
I'm thinking Monticello is probably lower electric and gas rate than Blanding.
Yeah, so his estimates come from putting, is that better, Nelson? Can you hear me? Those rates come from when he plugged the figures in on that website. They are not actually coming from like Dominion Energy and Empire Electric.
But they do have local
Okay.
cost rates in them, right?
Yeah.
They do- the
If
cost-
they are not the actual rates, then again, I'm still assuming Monticello rates will probably still be less than Blanding City, because Blanding is actually the middle person, where Monticello is direct from the Dominion or Empire Electric.
Monticello comes from Cortez.
Yeah. Ours comes from Colorado, so.
So how are these greenhouses, one in Blanding and then proposed, how are they, how is the temperature maintained? What's
That would be a gas heater with a fan in it. It's in
just a
there.
thermostat?
A thermostat, and that's pretty much what it is, will be gas and the electricity with the fan. Now, I wanna show you that there are some neat things, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, along with pathways and more education, on this, it would be, ideal to incorporate solar panels and computerized, monitoring or, you know, of that controlling of the temperatures in these, that would be,
And we're going in that direction. If you, we bought two very small greenhouses for White Horse. They put in their little, they're putting in their little, whatever you call that thing, patio in the middle. But Kristen Bushnell has timed the greenhouse with hydroponics, engineering, and class. So what she's done is integrated it so that we have the CCA kids in 7th grade who do career exploration are involved with that, along with our engineering kids, and they're using the whole thing to how to develop fertilizer, how to do hydroponics, and how to do it so the kids from 7th grade, their senior year, are going to come out with some pretty dang good skills, and that's where, you know, some of that same concept has been explained to what they want to do here at San Juan. And you know, this is an evolving process, and you're right on the money. Hopefully, when we do it, it'll lead to many other options that will provide it. Even for example, the biology teacher may want to, may want to use it. And there's been some discussion of biology saying, yeah, I'd like to plant some stuff in there too, you know. So it's hands-on learning, and it has a lot of potential, but it also has the potential of falling flat if we don't have a teacher that really wants to develop it. So, you know, but
and that's, you know, that's a concern is
Yeah.
having, you know, this expense.
You're saying that they are looking to do that, I mean, they want to do that.
well, we've had a lot of discussions about this, and I think they're probably listening in, because I know that they have that, but they understand that enrollment and developing their programs and recruiting to the programs are very imperative to making this good and having good instruction. And also the principals looking at ways with them to enhance it, because we don't have nearly the numbers in CTE that we have at White Horse, Minot Valley, and San Juan, and we could have a lot more, so.
You're like, sorry.
But right now, if I were to say today, and this is what, if I were to say today, but I don't think we can judge a future program by this moment, because we would change probably some of the classes, or we want to. But I mean, our classes that could benefit from this right now is 18 kids that's in the Ag Science program, and but we'd hope that would increase, and maybe biology would be part of it too. If we go to San Juan's, if I can find it real quick, their numbers did go down a little bit because of the pandemic and the different things that are
Yeah.
happening.
Steve has a question for you.
Please.
So we have a greenhouse at San Juan and apparently other schools.
We have a small one and an internal type of greenhouse at Minot Valley, and then we have two small ones at White Horse.
Yeah, I don't remember those schools coming to the board and requesting permission to build a greenhouse. Maybe I'm not remembering right.
I'm not sure that, definitely not White Horse. I don't know if San Juan did it.
Well, White Horse
So my question is, why does Monticello need to come to the board to request something?
Well, originally we came because of the land designation. Kyle said that before we do anything with that land, he wants a school board to designate that land for these purposes, and where we go from that would be the next step. And so that's where that discussion happened, because he was afraid that the board may wanna sell that land, or other
Yeah.
users wanna come to
In
it.
the other areas, they had land that was kind of dedicated for CT or had been utilized for CT, they just utilized it. We purchased this land strategically for a strategic purpose in the future that wasn't designated. So this would be the first attempt, and Kyle obviously didn't feel comfortable just stating that, yeah, it's not being used, go ahead.
Now, there
So I
is.
think he brought it to the board.